topics. Today is architectural design skills, or architectural deliverables. Kind of kept it loose. And we'll talk about a couple of different things. We'll give you a little bit of an outline of things that you should be doing today, specifically to get started, and start talking about things that you should be delivering as a part of your architectural design. So this is one of a series. This is the first of a series of sessions. Every other session we will be putting on a little bit of presentation just for everybody's understanding. We're going to do about 15 minutes, and then we're going to go into our breakout room. So it's mostly going to be breakout sessions. We're going to cruise through a lot of information. So take notes and ask questions and ask them of your mentors. And if any mentors need architects today to jump in and help for any reason, let us all know, and we can see what we can do and jump over and help. And then next week, in 2 weeks, the session is just breakouts, all to do work. So part of it will be planning out your time, and part of it will be producing some things, and a lot of it will be some discussion today about design and site and things. So I will share my screen. So today we're going to talk about design conception and deliverables. We're going to, like I said, we're just going to touch on these really quickly and give you just kind of a basic understanding of how to get a project started, a little reminder more than anything else. We talked about a lot of this in our fall session in architecture and design, and I know your mentors have talked about this in past years for those of you that are return students. So first thing we're going to talk about is selecting a site. By now, hopefully you've selected a site, maybe not, but that should be priority one today. Your team should have a site selected early today and move on and start doing the next steps, which are a blank slate. We all know, we've all talked about in the fall about a vision board and creating some ideas and putting some things together of anything. It could be another piece of architecture, it could be a sketch, it could be an object, it could be words, the map, the area you're in, an image of the city you're in, or like the image in the lower right, an activity that just inspires you to think about how the building or buildings should come together. Another one that you should probably get to today is writing down all the spaces that you need. This is just a sample program of an office building, but it has some basic components, right? You name the space, you describe the space, how many of those you have, give a little description of its use, about the rough area, and then some comments for your use later, like things you're thinking about. For example, if you look at the bottom, there are these dressing room, locker rooms, bike storage, and each of one of them have a comment kind of linking each other. Or maybe up at the workshop, it says adjacent to the loading dock, or things like janitorial storage says one per floor. Be thinking about those things, and they'll come into play later. But one thing that you can use this for is your area square footage. You can multiply your area square footage that you give for each one by its quantity and get your total square footage. And that's going to be important to think about what fits on the site. So another task, maybe not today, maybe today, but maybe as homework for next time, is to think about volumes of space. Now, as you look at your program and you quantify your residential areas and your support services, and you give them a three-dimensional volume, and you start placing them on your site that you've selected to see how they fit. How many levels do you need to go? How many buildings can you do? If you planned on doing tiny homes and you made them 120 square feet and you placed them 6 feet apart and you did all these things, and you look at the site really quickly and you go, oh, we can only fit 60 that way. We have to rethink how it goes. Maybe you go, we can fit 150 of these, and rethink, that program. So it's a little bit of back and forth between that program and this test fit. Then you start thinking about that program and those volumes in adjacencies. And so this is a simple bubble diagram where you look at each of those spaces in a bubble and then draw adjacencies. And you can keep it simple like this, or you can get complicated and start to really think about minor versus major adjacencies. I think something that's interesting about this is you look at this bubble diagram that someone put together, that children's area up there looks to be on the opposite side of the building as the lobby. But if you look at the adjacencies and the entry points, maybe it's not, depending on how you look at this, because these two, information circulation and lobby, have a major adjacency. Maybe the information circulation is inside the lobby, and then the children's area is directly adjacent to that, which puts the children's area directly adjacent to the lobby, coincidentally, based on its adjacency to information circulation. So just because you have a bubble diagram doesn't mean that's the layout of your building, layout of your site. And in fact, I would encourage you to do multiple bubble diagrams as you go through this and think about things. Think about how the building goes together. Think about how it functions, how it works. Think about the design, which is going to come up later. You may talk about the design and it changes how you think about this bubble diagram. So we've set it up, right? We've done a program, we've test fit, we know it fits on the site. We've done a couple bubble diagrams of how things are, fit next to each other or maybe have a relationship to one another. We need to start doing a little bit of research. First bit of research is about your site. So I just picked the Indiana Station site. And the first thing that I like to do is to look around the site and see what's around and see if this informs me. If I have some idea that I want to put a 30-story tower there, is that going to make sense in that neighborhood? And then, you want to think about, is it pedestrian oriented versus vehicle oriented neighborhood versus commercial versus single family residence. So I do a little bit of exploring, and I usually just start right in Google Maps. And you can see where I dropped my guy, and I came up and looked and found small church, simple gable roof, simple patio, little 4-foot fence, concrete around where they seem to be focused on parking for the church. And across the street from the church, I find a bunch of single family residences, both 1 and 2-story, although the one in the middle there seems to look like it probably has a two units, an upper and a lower. See a consistent fence line at the sidewalk. See pretty well kept yards behind the fence, but not so much out in front. That might be something you see just here, or you may see that consistently throughout the neighborhood. You want to think about what that means for your site and how you want to improve that. If you think it needs to be improved, replicated if you think it needs to be replicated, or maybe not. Going the other way on this site, there's a high school that's immediately there, so some geometries the high school you might find interesting. Also might want to think about traffic when you're thinking about later when we're talking about site access and designing your site. What's happening here on Alma Avenue relative to our site access. A couple more blocks away is a church, steeple, the other things that you might find you can play off of or talk to with the aesthetic of your building. And then a little further away, I found something kind of curious. There's a high school, middle school, but the curious thing about it for me was an architectural statement. The upper picture up here is an existing facade that seemed to be there before the high school and is left there. This circle up here on the top is actually this piece right here. So for me, it was an interesting dichotomy of modern architecture put in left an existing context for the street view for the community. For better, for worse, I don't know, but that might be something that you find interesting or may want to play off of when you look at the design. Then you've done your research on context, you need to start thinking about design concepts. There are lots of ways to communicate these. You communicate them in simple sketches. You put these up on your Jamboard. You can add Post-it notes on the Jamboard. You can talk about these, you can present these to your team. There might be some fun ideas out of it that you find interesting. Next level is maybe a dirty, what's called napkin sketch, and lots of text on it. Now you can write this text in, or you can put the sketch up, and like I said on the last one, put the sketch on Jamboard and put a bunch of Post-it notes around it and things to point to. Or it could be a drawing of some simple geometries that start to create a form, give you voids and additive places where you can start to create spaces and you start to see a building come out of it. Or it could be a three-dimensional exploration. You can take toothpicks, sugar cubes, Legos, leftover pieces of plastic that might have gotten put in the recycling bin, can become parts of a concept model where you think about how the building design starts to relate three-dimensionally. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about today in research is precedent. You might be interested in doing shipping containers. So you might want to look around and see what other people have done, what other designers have done with shipping containers, and see what you like and what you don't like. You may like the way they stack these on top of each other. You may like the innovative way they created a patio for the residents. You may not like the cantilevers. You may not like the round windows. But there are certain things that you can find, and you'll find multiple versions of this that you can use or think about, or may inspire you to look at things in a different way. You might be looking at a different way to skin a simple tower, or think about how they use exterior circulation to create some interest on the exterior and to also save square footage on the inside. Because we are in Southern California, we can use some outdoor circulation. You might want to think about, maybe you're thinking about a building that's a bridge, or maybe it's just glass boxes being pushed in and out and creating volumes and space and creating the architecture. Or maybe you just want a building that looks like a circle. As you look at all of these, you just want to think about how it fits on the site and how it's going to work with your site access, and also whether it fits on your site. So as you go through all of this, all of these different things, you select your site, you do your vision board, you program things, you test fit it, you do your program diagrams, you do all your research, and then you got to start thinking about the site layout.
Hey everyone, so I'm going to talk a little bit about site design. When thinking about how to locate your building or buildings on the site, you're going to want to consider a number of different influencing factors. So the drawings that you're seeing on the slide here are just a couple examples of how you might diagram this information for your own sites. Important things you want to consider are things like key access points and circulation, as Tim just mentioned. Where are the best places to locate your entrances so that they are visible and welcoming? How can you encourage people to come into your site and move around the site and move around the buildings as well? Are there pedestrian versus vehicular or even bicycle circulation paths, and how do they interact with each other? You'll also want to think about where you want to incorporate open spaces and how do you want to program them? How do you integrate landscape into these spaces, and how do you manipulate topography as well, so that maybe it's not just a flat site, but something that has some changes in elevation to make it even more interesting. Also think about how climate might affect your designs. You want to consider things like wind and rainfall, and whether or not you need to protect from these elements, or you want to celebrate them in some way and encourage, a light breeze onto the site in some instances. You also want to think about how your buildings and your projects orient towards the sun, so access to natural lighting. Think about your programs and how they, what their requirements are for lighting as well, and for ventilation, and how you orient your buildings in order to create opportunities to bring light onto your site. Also start thinking about your views and how you want to optimize certain views, so you can orient your building or frame, views, things that are in the surrounding context or even within the site itself. And you also can consider blocking views that maybe are less desirable in some way. really, there's a lot of things that you can consider outside of this list, but this is a really good starting point when determining which factors, can create a good design that benefits not just your visitors, but also the surrounding community, and think about the ways in which your site is integrated into your surrounding context as well.
So I'm going to talk about drawings. So in order to describe the building, architects have to put together a set of drawings that we can give to a contractor, and they would know what to build. So the first very important set of drawings is called plans. So this is all probably going to be recap for those of you who have been part of ACE before, but a plan is literally taking a building, taking the top of it off and looking down into the building. And what you'll see is the layout of the rooms, how you get from one space to another. You'll see different elements like maybe some furniture, the plumbing fixtures, door swings, things like that. And the plans are always in the front of the documents because it's sort of the most important set of drawings. And then the next type of drawing is a section. So that's looking, taking a building and slicing it vertically and seeing and exposing what you see is the height. You might see some countertops, doorways, window openings. So the next set of drawings is elevations, and that's taking a building and literally showing the faces of it. So the lower diagram is kind of showing a structure that's being, a building that's being unfolded. And so it's almost like kind of if you're taking a photograph, you would just see the different faces of a building. And what you would also see is where all the windows are, where all the doors are, the height of the building, what the materials are. That's what the lower right-hand image is showing, the different like if it's made out of brick or stucco or what have you. And then, so next I'm going to talk about scale. So obviously buildings are too big to put on a sheet of paper, so we have to draw things to scale. And your mentors can go into that in more detail, but so for example, a common scale we use for floor plans is like 1/8 inch equals a foot. And if you want to show more detail, for example, if you want to show like a construction detail, how pieces come together, you would do a larger scale, like 3 inches equals a foot. So that was literally like a scale, but another way to think about scale is the human scale. And this is something you can start thinking about when you're programming your spaces. So obviously buildings are designed for people, and that's what the basic scale is for all buildings. Buildings are designed for us to use. So I kind of showed two examples of, the top one is an image of the Notre Dame Cathedral, and that scale, that is a very large scale building, and it's supposed to invoke like a sense of grandeur and kind of make you feel small and kind of be in awe of the space, versus the building below is called the Glass House by Philip Johnson, and that's a residential project. So it's supposed to feel more intimate and kind of cozy. So when you're thinking about the program, think about like what you want to have, what makes sense to be in a larger scale, and what makes sense to be a smaller scale. For example, the apartment unit versus maybe the lobby. And then the last thing is line weight. So this is just a way to kind of denote what things are, when you were cutting through plans and sections, what things are being cut. So the walls that are cut are in a heavier line weight, things that they are showing an outline or a lighter line weight, things that are maybe in the background, even a lighter line weight. So these are just kind of common, kind of basic drafting concepts that you learn right out of school or at the beginning of learning how to put together a set of drawings.
We're going to show a little bit on some 3D model and the purpose of building a 3D model and what you want to get out of it. We're not going to talk about, Young is going to present some views and things of a model that's already built. We're not going to talk about using SketchUp. If you need to look at that, there are some great videos that are on the links are on the website that Aaron Olko did and Ricky Vega, I think, did back in May. Please go take a look at those. They're very helpful. And take it away, Young.
Hey guys, so as Kim mentioned, this is a model that I found on Google SketchUp 3D Warehouse. And so this is just a really great resource, not just to find demo models, but also even just like cabinets and stuff like that. So you can like search these things, download them, and then you can import them onto inside of your SketchUp site once you download it onto your computer. What I'm going to be running through are just different things of like 3-dimensional views that you can kind of use in order to like show your project. So this first scene is just kind of like giving you a perspective of what the project kind of looks like from the outside. You can do it like from like usually from the eye view of a person, or you can show maybe like how this building looks from above and how it relates to the context. And the way that you do it, I'm using the free version of SketchUp here, and you can just kind of go online and find this free version and import models and such. But the way that you kind of set some of these views, so for example, scene 1 right here, is by clicking this button here, which is the scenes button, and then this plus sign, and it will save whatever scene or view that you want to. So I'll just do this as a scene 2. So it'll save that as here as scene 4. And this would be what you would call just a perspective rendering. Another view that a lot of architects like to do, you don't want to just show the exterior, you want to also like go on the inside too, to kind of like show what the space kind of looks like. So this is just an interior view of what the project looks like from inside of the volume and inside the project, like kind of give you a feeling of what it would be like to walk around inside of the space. Another view that I'll be talking about from this would be an axonometric view. So an axonometric view is looking from above, but also, as you can see, all these lines are parallel. So this is a great view to kind of describe like the process of going through the spaces and how the spaces relate to each other. And the way that I got this view was to, first of all, there's actually, there was a roof above here before. And so 1 second. The way that, so right here in the scenes, in order to get to these parallel views, you click on this button here to give you the isometric view. And then after you do that, you hide the roofs in order to like reveal what's below. Right now I'm kind of, and the way that you do that is you right click and then you press hide once you select an object. So if you click on that, then you can hide whatever that and reveal what's below. So that's how you kind of get this view as well. And I just wanted to show you that like even though we're using this free SketchUp, There's other ways of kind of like showing these views, and let me just pull that up too. And this is just to kind of inspire you guys to show that although you might not get to this level of quality of rendering, these are just examples. So for example, you can do a photorealistic view using a rendering engine. You can also maybe print out that SketchUp by screen printing it and then printing out yourself, and then you can just draw over it with tracing paper by hand, and even like color, watercolor or marker or whatever you want to do. And also just there's so many different types of representing architecture. You can do it with like a hand sketch, which is really compelling too, showing like the activity, and it's a little more free flow. And then there's also like you can apply Photoshop, where you can collage different elements into it in order to like make it a little bit more lively, talk about the program, and have everything that is architecture a little bit more abstract. And then for the axonometric views that I was describing before, there's many ways that you can kind of use those things as diagrams in order to tell the story of how you got to the design. So they're more just like 3D representations of the blocks in which you kind of thought about the design and how you manipulated them in order to like come to the final design. And also for the axonometric diagrams, it can show different layers of construction, like how the pieces fit together, and then also like what the layers are inside of like how you thought about the space. Like for example, like the roof, the structure, and then the program and what the architecture is below it. So these are just examples of how you can take it to the next level, and will be like, you can definitely just ask your mentor, like if once you kind of take it out of SketchUp, what you can do to maybe like improve your design and show even more what you can kind of show through all these different representations. So that's it from 3D.
That's our presentation. We went a little over 15 minutes, but we want to get into the breakout rooms and get your teams going. So things to, just a quick recap, today you should have a site selected. You should be doing vision board or concept design, get into spatial programming and maybe even bubble diagramming adjacencies. And then some of the homework could be maybe those bubble diagrams or context research, or concept sketches and precedent research, and come back in 2 weeks with that and present to your team and have the next level of design discussions. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Anne to split us up into our rooms and have fun.
Okay, so just look for the invitation on your screen, and we'll see you back around 5:20 or so.
All right, welcome back. We got people coming back. I think that's everybody now. All right, well, we just wanted to bring everybody back together and say thank you for joining us. Hope you had a good, productive breakout session. Got a lot done. We've got a few minutes. If anybody's got anything they want to share, anything that you guys, anybody want to, maybe even mentors, give you like just a 2-minute little, like to share what we talked about. Anybody got anything? No, nobody wants to share.
Tim, I'll kick it off.
Nice.
So I threw out during our session kind of, as you know, as contractors, kind of got hung up on cost, right? And I wanted to kind of just share with people, pay attention to the code assignment or the build assignment under each one of the spaces, because that can help you determine what, you know, maybe a little bit more about your costs. What you can build in Riverside and what you can build in LA, there's two different cost factors associated with that. So just wanted to share that.
Tim, we had a guest speaker who is actually working on affordable housing. And I don't know if Mike wants to say anything, but he, you know, first thing he said was to know what your goals are. Mike, do you want to?
I'm in the city attorney's office at the city of LA, but the projects I work on are basically to build affordable housing in LA. So, I listened in before we did the breakout group, and programming spaces, I think, was a really good thing to think about. And that, you know, we're talking about context of what the local community is like, but also keep in mind the types of people who will be living in these spaces and what their needs might be. There's a few YouTube videos out there for different tiny home communities and modular housing setups and other projects both in LA and outside LA that you can kind of get ideas from in terms of what types of spaces might work for different people living in the building.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for joining and helping out. I really appreciate it. I want to piggyback off of that, and I'll close it off real quick. But one of our students, and Jake, and maybe you can expand on it if you want, stated, you know, he said, "Oh, if you go to Google and you just search for a homeless shelter, it's not good. We don't want to do that. Let's do better." So I think I'll leave it with, let's do better, and let's see what we can show the city and show the county and show the adults how this can work. So. Thank you all for joining. We have another session in 2 weeks that's just breakouts, so you'll get in and then everybody will break out and do more sessions, and hopefully you're chatting with your teams between then. But otherwise, thank you for showing up. Happy Thursday, and we'll see you next time.